What's going on, my good people? Mike Hidalgo here. Thank you for joining us on another FCP Euro DIY. Today, we're going to be working on a 2016 BMW F10 535i. Today on the F10 behind me, we're going to be covering how to replace your engine mounts and transmission mount. In front of me, we have a Corteco kit, which is available on fcpo.com. It includes both of the engine mounts and all the hardware needed to do this job. In addition to that kit, we have gone ahead and added the Corteco transmission mount from the website, as well as all these components help suspend the engine and transmission in place. So we might as well do all of them together. Typically, these are going to last you anywhere from 60, maybe 80 to 100,000 miles. It really depends on the kind of driving your vehicle sees. Now, the car behind us is a little bit, if you will, on the lesser scale of mileage right now. So it's not so much about fixing a problem with this vehicle as it is today just showing you how to do this DIY for when the time comes to do it on your F10. Now, this is a rear-wheel drive model. If you have an xDrive, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. You have axles in the way. This car is a little bit more open, but the process is going to be generally the same. Before we get started on this DIY though, let's take a look at some of the tools we're going to need for this job. For this DIY, you're going to need a 3/8 drive torque wrench, something that can handle up to 100 Newton meters. We have also a 3/8 drive ratchet, 1/4 inch ratchet. We have a 10 mil and a 13 mil wrench, a couple extensions and swivel adapters, some torque seal, a bungee cord. Electric tools always make the job a little bit easier. Some of the specialty sockets you'll need is an E14 and an E18, a T30, and then from there we have a 10 mil, an 8 mil, we have a 13, 15, and 16. Pretty straightforward. Something not pictured here but needed is going to be either a floor jack or screw jack and or an engine brace, depending on how you're working. A block of wood is also going to come in handy for those of you using the screw jack or floor jack. Now that we know what we're working with, let's go ahead and get started on this DIY. Now, my good people, let me start by saying there's no right or wrong way to tackle this DIY. For us today, we're just going to start by removing all the paneling underneath the car. We can take a look at the engine mounts. There's going to be kind of a funky process to get these out. It's not like your traditional car where you can just suspend stuff or jack it up from underneath and get them out. These get keyed into the arms versus just having a stud and bolt that you can pop out. So it makes it a little bit different. So for us, we'll take the skid shielding off underneath first, give you a better view of what those look like. And then we can work between going up and down and suspending our engine, bracing our engine, all that good stuff. Same for the transmission. So with that, we're going to be taking both of the shields off. We have about 29, 30, 8mm screws to remove. Let's get to it. All right, we're going to go ahead and set this to the side, and then we're going to work on removing the rearward one as well. All righty, my good people. With this shielding off, we have a better view of the underneath of our car. We can see our passenger engine mount over here, and we can see our driver's side engine mount over here. So with that, we're gonna get a little bit more comfortable. We're gonna get situated and get ready to prep ourselves. We'll do the engine mounts first, and then we'll reward ourselves with the transmission mount last. It's gonna be the easier one to do out of the three. All right, now that we are back up top, we saw quickly where our engine mounts sit. We're going to start with the driver's side one, which is arguably going to take the most effort. There's a couple things in the way that we want to remove in order to access the engine mount bracket that's going to have to come off to get our mounts off. We're also going to do this now before we have a big engine support bar in our way, giving us less room to work with. We have a 15 and 16mm bolt that holds this engine bar in place. You could maybe work around it, but it's going to be a lot easier to just get it out. This 15 is a one-time use bolt. It is linked in the description below. We are going to reinstall it today, literally only because we're going to take it right back out for another video, which we are filming later this evening. But that is linked in the description below. We're going to start with the 15 first, get that one out, and then we're going to switch over to our 16mm socket, and we'll just go ahead and set this bar to the side. So now we have some more room to work on removing our airbox and ducting. We're going to take our flathead screwdriver next. We're going to undo this clamp up top here to our airbox. We're going to be pulling this out. That should give us more than enough play. And while I have you here, there is this small little grommet on each cable here. We have two of them. These just kind of pop up and slide off. And now with those three off, What we're going to want to do here is pop the airbox out of the front rubber grommet right here. That's going to allow us to lift this up a bit and get this feed pipe off. If you look through the hood latch over here, there's just another small plastic tab straight down here underneath the hood release cable that you can push on to unclip the other end of this ducting. I'm just going to push down on that and pull this piece forward out of the engine bay. Just like that. Set this to the side. With that out, we should be able to pull our airbox off now. And we can go ahead and set this to the side, my good people. Now that we have that off, we have a better view of our charge pipe, which we're going to be removing. You'll see we have one clamp here. We have a couple vacuum lines. One's going right here. These other ones we can just kind of work around. We have our pressure sensor right here, which we're going to undo, and a metal clip. Just be very mindful. These can break. These love to break, so you're going to want to be very gentle with this. All right, we're going to start with our clamp flathead screwdriver. You know the good deal, my good people. Go ahead and loosen that up nicely. We want as much wiggle room as we can. Don't want to break this, even though I have a whole warehouse of parts behind me. Moving on, we have this vacuum line under here. This one is just a pinch type situation, pretty standard. You've seen this on most BMWs. We're gonna go ahead and pinch on either end to unclip the alligator teeth on either side of there. Sorry for the view, I'm just pinching right now. Give it a bit of a wiggle. That can hang out there. Moving down here, we have our pressure switch. We're gonna go ahead and just press on this little tab down here. It's gonna be a little hard to see, but it's a pretty standard connector. Just a little tab, you push down and release the connector. There we go. It's a little flathead screwdriver underneath the tab here. If you're gonna do it that way, just be very careful. You don't wanna break the little tab there. Just go ahead and tuck that back. And then we have this clip here. This will be similar to your coolant hoses on anything E46 and up. Just a quick disconnect kind of style clip. You're gonna pop this up like so to unlock it. Once it's up all the way like that, then we can go ahead and work this end off of the intake manifold here. So we're gonna separate from over here, kind of work on loosening that up. We're gonna try to just loosen the whole thing up as a whole. I'm gonna pull this clip off so I'm not fighting it by any chance. Make sure you don't lose that. That's given us a better view at our cooler down there. You can see it has 4 rubber grommets, 2 on either side. The other 2 are a little buried, but they're held in by a bunch of 10mm bolts. 4. Those are what we're gonna undo next to move it out of our way. All right, my good people, we have 2 10mm nut and bolt situations going on the front half. I'm gonna use a 10mm wrench to counter hold. I'm gonna just zap off the back of these nuts. And for the last bolt, we're gonna switch rolls here. The ratchet's gonna come from underneath with a longer 10mm socket, and we'll counter hold the 10mm nut from above. Now that is gonna allow us to move this cooler. We don't need to go too crazy with it. We don't wanna hurt these lines, but basically, if you look underneath the throttle body here, you can see one of the E-Torx bolts that holds our engine mount bracket to the block. Straight beneath it is the other one for the engine mount itself. And tucked right here, a little bit hard to see, we'll get you a better light on, is the second of the 2 on the top side here, which is why we removed this cooler in the first place. So before we work on removing those, we're just gonna go ahead and set up our engine support bar. Then we can start pulling these bolts out, the engine mount bolt, and then get underneath. Next, we're gonna pull our beauty cover off. Just a couple rubber grommets, similar to the airbox. Straight up. Set this to the side. This is gonna give us access to the threaded spot on the top of the head here to install our pseudo tow hitch hook. You've seen us do this before on some of our oil pan DIYs when we support the engine. We're gonna go ahead and thread this on. And for those of you needing this, we have this also linked in the description below, again, with our tools. Now for this car, you can do this one of two ways. If maybe you're feeling like you want to be extra sure on this, you can take these covers off on either side of the fenders, if you will. It just has a bunch of plastic expanding rivets. Truly what you want to stay is on the framework here, so you can see on this side it kind of just curves in and follows this line. The passenger side is a bit more exposed. You can see where the VIN number is. That's the goal there. We've worked on this car plenty of times before. We're comfortable putting the brace on as is. But again, for those of you kind of doing this for the first time, go ahead and pop these off so you can set the feet of your engine brace bar exactly where you want them. Now at this point, I'm just setting this up to basically kind of match the tension or the load on the mounts. I'm not looking to lift up the engine or put any weird strain on the hardware. The goal here is just simply to take a load off without lifting it up. We can always adjust this as needed once we actually get the arms and the mounts disconnected. But for now, we're just setting down the brace. I think that's going to do us just fine right there. Okay, now we have our engine brace in place. Again, we're not looking to lift the engine here or do anything. We're just kind of matching the load. Before we go ahead and work on removing those E-Torques behind the cooler, we're going to head back underneath the car and undo the 13mm bolts from the subframe side of things. That way, once the mount and the arm and everything's nice and loose, we can kind of pull it out from the top here. You also pull it out from the bottom. It's really whatever you like, my good people. But with that, let's go ahead and hop underneath for one hot second. We have 3 13mm bolts underneath to remove. We're going to just zap these out. It's important to note 2 of them are going to be the same, and then the third one, which is going to be going through the front of the subframe here, it's going to be a little bit longer. It's just going to have a threaded end versus a whole threaded shank here, so it's also significantly longer. You can see there's a spacer here. It's going to be pretty hard to mess these up. But with that, that leaves the bottom of our engine mount loose. While I have you here, we're going to get to one of the E-Torques that holds the engine mount bracket in place, which is right above here. So let's go ahead and do that now. All right, back up top, we have the E14 that goes through both the mount and the mount bracket. We're going to go ahead and remove that next. We have an E14 on our 3/8 drive ratchet. Now we're going to try the first of the 3 E18s holding this in. The second E18 is going to be right beneath the throttle body. Basically, it's a bit hard to see, but you can see we have an extension on the E18 here. I'm just going to go in and zap that out. Now, I'm just being lazy here using power tools. You probably have an easier time, honestly, using a ratchet with an extension. We have one more E18 over to the right, towards the back side that we're going to get. And then this arm can come out, and we can pull the mount out and drop in new stuff. And then to the end of our bracket, towards the transmission side of things, you can see the last E18 behind that little harness cable there. That's going to be the last one holding this bracket to the block, and then we can go ahead and pull it up. Here's our engine mount bracket. Just to give you a better view, this sits in the car like this. Top bolt, second E18, third E18 towards the transmission side of things, and this is the opening for the E14 where the engine mount keys in. Let me pull that out now. There it is, the vein of my existence today. The N55 engine mount, ladies and people. So as you can see, what happens is the old mount starts to collapse over time. This portion of it that supports the engine arm and engine start to squish in, versus this nice new one that sits nice and high. And you also get a little bit of noise inside of there. This one's nice and solid. So over time, everything just starts degrading in here. We could probably feed these mounts from down beneath the car and make our lives a lot easier, but we're gonna do it from up top. Now the goal is going to be to get our engine bracket back up, make sure all the bolt holes line up, and get those started by hand. Now we're just going to feed our engine mount bracket back on. We're going to have to move the cooler a little bit. That should look something like that, my good people. We have the engine mount bracket slipped back over the engine mount. Now we're going to take the three E18s and try to get those started by hand. Keep in mind that your engine may be sitting lower than it needs to just because of how you set up your engine brace and how collapsed your old engine mounts were. This one's obviously going to be a little bit higher, so don't be surprised if you need to raise your engine brace a bit and get the engine to sit up a little bit higher. So right now I'm just feeling for the bolt holes, seeing what the situation is down here, what the vibe is. A little vibe check. We're feeling a little bit low still, so we're just going to crank the engine up a few more times. Now we have that last one started. The next thing we're going to do is start the E14 that goes from the mount to the bracket. That's this one right down here. Want to make sure that. Next one we're going to go in for is the E14. This one secures the mount to the bracket. Want to make sure this one starts by hand, which I think we got so far. We have it in enough threads where we know it's going to be fine. Before we tighten anything down, we're going to head underneath the car and get the bottom 313 started as well, so that we know everything's nice and clocked in the correct position. Underneath the car, we're going to reinstall our three 13mm bolts. Again, the engine mount kit includes new ones. What's great about what we're doing right now is before everything's under tension and under load, we have, just the smallest amount of play to adjust our engine mount, make sure our bolt holes are lined up, which is why we don't tighten everything down right at once. We make sure everything's started by hand first, so everything's lined up properly. Remember, we have the longer bolt. That one goes through the front half of the subframe. Just gonna leave that one loose in there for now. Want to make sure that these all start nicely. Look up, make sure that the bolt holes are lined up. There we go. Just had to move the engine mount a little bit. We're just gonna snug these up quickly, but very gently with the electric impact. And then we're gonna torque all three down to 19 Newton meters. So again, we're just gonna have this on the slowest setting, just speeding up the process a little bit. All right, and now we can torque them down to 19 Newton meters. Beautiful. This small black bracket is held on by two 13mm nuts. We're just gonna zap this off to give us access to the E18 up there from underneath here. That'll give us some more leverage room to torque this hardware down. So let me zap these two nuts off and then we'll work on the E14 and that E18. Next, we're gonna work on torquing down our E14s. Those get torqued down to 100 Newton meters. So we're gonna go ahead and do that now. First, we're gonna use the electric ratchet just to literally snug it down, and then we'll go ahead and torque it down properly. Snugged up, now we're gonna torque that to 100 Newton meters. Beautiful. All right, now let's get that E18 situated. So while I have you down here, we'll do the E18 here that we can access after removing our little bracket for the cooler. We have our torque wrench set to 68 Newton meters. That's gonna be for the M12 hardware. If your car has M10 hardware, those only get torqued down to 38 Newton meters. So just keep that in mind. M10 equals 38 Newton meters. M12, like this car has, is 68 Newton meters. There we go. Not a whole lot. We're gonna go ahead and hit it with some torque seal, just that we know it's been torqued properly. We're gonna torque that one and the other one left from up top up. Before I leave you down here, we're gonna reinstall our bracket for our cooler with our two 13mm nuts that we removed earlier. Beautiful. All right, with that, let's hit up top and finalize those two E18s. All right, now we're gonna tackle our middle E18. We're gonna see what combination of extensions help us here. Something that's super key, like we talked about earlier, is ratchets and torque wrenches with flex heads. They make life a whole lot easier. There we go. Now we're gonna get the top one, which was a little bit hard to see. There we go. With that situated, I just bungee corded this cooler out of the way a moment ago just for my own sake, since we need to give you, my good people, the best view possible. But with that back in place, we can feed the cooler back where it's supposed to go. Make sure it's lined up properly. Remember, we moved that bracket off on the other side. Make sure that we have everything on the right side. And then we can get those 10mm bolts and nuts started back up by hand. I'm just gonna feed these metal bushings back in that I had taken out earlier. I still don't want them to pop out, move around on us, or keep us from doing anything else, which they probably would have been okay, but you know, no problem, my good people. And we're gonna go ahead and feed our 10mm bolt up from the bottom through the cooler. Make sure you're not pinching any cables or any harnesses or anything when you're installing all these parts back in, especially the engine mounts and brackets, of course. And we'll just give them a little snug with the ratchet, and we'll kind of hold with our 10mm wrench just to make sure that they're not going to go anywhere. These weren't too tight to begin with, so we're just doing this mainly for insurance. There's two, and then we're going to do the third one from underneath. We have a great view of it, so let's do that now. And we're going to feed this last 10mm bolt up. All right, my good people, at this point, the driver's side engine mount is fully installed, fully torqued down, torque sealed, all the good stuff. The cooler is back in place, fully bolted down. What we're gonna do now, since it's all we have to do on this side, is we're gonna button everything back up on that side before we hop over to the passenger side mount, which, cross your fingers, should be a lot easier. So with that, let's button up that top end really quickly and move on to the passenger side. We're back up top. We're gonna reinstall our upper charge pipe here. It's all cleaned up, ready to go. We put the metal clip back on it as well. All right, we don't need to go gorilla, just nice and tight. That is gonna be a charge pipe reinstalled to now which we can get our ducting. Let's go ahead and bring that over. This was the forward piece that we removed. If you remember, this one keys in underneath the driver's side hood latch. Pretty straightforward. There we go, baby. That's exactly what we want to see. Now we can bring our air box over. All right, now let's get our suspension brace back in place. This one's held in by a 15 and a 16. Reminder, the 15 is a one-time use bolt, my good people. That's also the longer one. We are quite literally taking this back off in the next hour to do another DIY, but for now we're just gonna install it to keep everything happy and so we can give you the proper torque specs. All right, we're just gonna snug these up and then give them a good torque down. The 16mm bolt up front on top of the radiator support gets torqued down to 56 Newton meters. And then the back one-time use bolt gets torqued down to 30 Newton meters plus an additional 90 degrees. Now, again, as I said before, we are replacing this bolt for a DIY that we're about to film next. So for now, I'm just gonna torque it down to the initial 30 Newton meters. Beautiful. And for those of you with the Eagle memory, don't forget we have the 3 lines to secure back here on our airbox. Pain in the butt. It's just these little rubber grommets that hold them in place. All right, my good people, that is fully buttoned up on the driver's side, just like when we started. Now we're gonna hop over to the passenger side. If you've made adjustments to your bar, now's the time to readjust. For those of you, again, not using a support bar, this is where your floor jack and piece of wood across the oil pan is going to come in handy. So with that, we have everything still nice and supported. Let's hop over to the passenger side. That one we're going to work pretty much exclusively from underneath. So let's get to it. On the passenger side, we have 3 T30s holding on the shield that we want to remove in order to get our engine mount out. We have 2 down beneath the downpipe and 1 up top beneath the turbo. We have 3 13s. Same deal, the most forward one is the long bolt with just the end of the shank being threaded. Now from there we can move up top here by our shield. We have an E14 and 4 E18s. So on the passenger side, my good people, you have the E18 that holds the mount to the bracket. And then you also have E18s that hold the bracket to the block. Those are a little bit smaller than the driver's side. These are M10 hardware, so these are going to get torqued a little bit different than the driver's side. So we're going to go in with our extension and our swivel on our E14. Get that situated on there. For those of you good people that are following along at home, again, with a floor jack versus a engine brace, this is kind of what that's going to look like. Obviously, we're using the screw jack, we're on the lift. But a nice piece of wood going across a decent spot on the pan, your screw jack or floor jack underneath. We're going to use that right now to help give us a little bit more clearance so we can slide this mount and bracket out. All right, my good people. So what the deal is here is we raised up the engine from up top. Obviously, we have our screw jack plus floor jack under here to lift this up. We can't get enough height with the driver's side mount that we did originally bolted to the subframe. It's just impossible. You're not going to be able to raise it up. So learn from our mistakes. Leave those bottom 3 13mm bolts loose in the time being. We took them fully out again. Now that's going to allow us enough room to raise up the engine and get this passenger side mount out. So a little bit of a bummer. We're doing some work twice, but honestly, not the end of the world. So here's our bracket. Here's our engine mount and shield. No problem. Let's grab the new mount. We'll get this fed back into place, and then we'll reinstall all 6 of our 13mm bolts down below. Feeding that bad boy in. We got our shield. We have to raise this quite a bit, my good people, in order to be able to get this bracket and engine mount combo in here. It's a pretty tight spot. But once you have it up high enough, we're going to start by installing the bolts for the mount to, from the bracket to the block. Then we can lower everything down a bit and then kind of do what we did on the driver's side, where we're going to get everything started by hand first. We'll lower everything so we can get our 13 started down beneath, and then go from there. And for this, I just threw in 1 T30, so it wasn't dancing around on us. We haven't taken it down just yet. Now we're gonna go ahead and feed our E18s back in by hand. Let's get these started. These are also M12s, just like the ones on the driver's side. But just note, if you have M10 hardware, that has a different torque spec than the M12s, which we'll cover in just a moment once we start tightening all this stuff down. .68 Newton meters for the M12 hardware. If your car is equipped with M10, that's going to be torqued to 38 Newton meters. And then we're going to get our E14 over from the side. Get that started by hand. And we're going to just snug it up with the electric ratchet. And then we're going to torque it down to 100 Newton meters. So to give you a better view, we're working through this pocket here to get this final 100 on the E14. This is a pocket that was given to us by removing the shield held in by the 3 T30s. Can't really see what we're doing, but we can feel. That's what we want to feel in here, my good people. Okay, no problem. That is going to secure that. You know the drill. We'll put a little mark on it. Now with that in the way, these 3 13mm bolt holes down here are looking pretty dang close, pretty lined up. So what we're going to do is we're going to get those fed up. We have the long bare shank with just the threaded end at the front to the subframe. And for what it's worth, we have some of the load off of the mount still by using the floor jack down here, or the screw jack. And while I have those 3 started, reminder, we had to come back and undo the driver's side. We're going to go ahead and feed these through as well. And we're going to make sure they're all torqued down to 19 Newton meters. All right, my good people, with that, that is officially the engine mounts fully sorted. Before we put our splash shield on and our beauty cover back on, basically before we go back up top, we're gonna go ahead and bang out the transmission mount while we have you here. So let's go ahead and do that now. And before we forget, we're just gonna put the 3 T30s back in that hold our little heat shield here in place, which didn't make my life misery working around it. Maybe. Did I yell at it once or twice? Maybe. Are the editors gonna cut this out? 100%. Because they don't like to have fun. Wonderful. We have 5 13mm pieces of hardware down below, 2 bolts on either side, 1 13mm nut in the middle for the mount. There is 2 slots on this bracket that allows the bushings to kind of go in at an angle and key in, which is why while we had it like this, we rotated it and dropped it just to clear the ears on the mount, give us a little bit more room to work with, and get this 13mm nut off up top. Should very much be finger loose. This is also a great opportunity to check your ground straps. Make sure they look in good, healthy condition. So you can see this mount is honestly an excellent shape. It hasn't really deteriorated that much. Probably could have been okay leaving it, but that's not the point of this video. The point of this video is to show you how to replace it. We're gonna grab our new one, feed that in. That's gonna key into the transmission bracket right here. Get this 13 up top started by hand. Torque spec's about 23 Newton meters for these, so nothing too extreme. That's gonna do us nice and snug there. We're gonna put it in our mount. Again, it's a little bit crooked, our bracket here. Allow it to clear the ears on our bushing, on our bracket, if you will. We're just gonna use the impact on low setting to snug them up, and then we're gonna torque them down to 25 Newton meters. All right, that's gonna be that, my good people. We're gonna get the screw jack out of the way, and then we're gonna pick it right back up by installing all of our splash shields so we can head up top and wrap up this DIY. All right, with a few started by hand, then we'll get the 8mm socket ready to rock and roll, and we're just gonna snug all these in. Once we get the back section done, then we'll get the forward one installed as well. get the front piece keyed in. We put some hardware here at the back to get it held in place. All right, now with the splash shields buttoned up, all we really have left to do is head up top, remove our brace bar, install our beauty cover. So let's do that now. Just gonna pull this brace bar off. You can see we detached it between using the combo of the screw jack / floor jack and this. So you can do it with really either one, but having both definitely does not hurt ever, but definitely not a necessity. We're gonna go ahead and pull our tow hook out. Our beauty cover has two little tabs on the back. These key into those white grommets that go into the charge pipe over there. Just gonna kind of get this in the rough spot. Just feel for these two to line up. Pop it down. Close this bad boy up. And that, my good people, is gonna conclude this DIY for today. A little bit of a time-consuming job. Definitely be patient with it. It's a little bit tight and it's a little bit annoying, but it's definitely doable. If you like this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments on what we did today, or there's a specific F10 chassis video you want to see, leave it in the comment section below. And if you like this DIY and you want to see more like them, please consider subscribing. We make new ones all the time. As always, thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you in the next one.